This episode is brought to you by Goals.com, the sales performance platform built to help teams stay focused, motivated, and on track. While most CRMs just track data, Goals.com drives real results. It's simple, affordable, and designed to help your sales team hit targets faster, without the headache of complex setup or costly consultants. Whether you're using a CRM or not, Goals.com works seamlessly to elevate your performance. Book a fun, fast demo today at Goals.com.
Welcome back to the Goals.com podcast. Today we're diving into the world of outbound mastery with someone who's made turning cold email outreach into his specialty. Dean Fiacco is the founder of Beanstalk Consulting and Scaled Mail, two powerhouses helping B2B businesses build unstoppable pipelines. If you've ever wondered how to actually get your emails opened, your calls answered, and your pipeline overflowing, stick around because Dean is about to drop some serious sales gold. All right, Dean, you've built two companies, Beanstalk Consulting and Scaled Mail, around helping businesses grow. What inspired you to get into the pipeline building side of sales?
Well, I'm a tried and true long in the tooth sales guy by now, I guess. So started my career with a brief stint on Wall Street, came out of college, figured that's where the money was to be made. Quickly found out, I had a conversation actually with an asset manager early on who said something to the effect of, well, you'll be wealthy, but you'll be gray when it happens. And that didn't really sit well with me. So started looking around for, where was the Wild West, to be had, and quickly landed on tech in general. Was like, I got to get in the startup game. Seems like that's where the action is. So this is, right after the '08 recession, to give you an idea of timing. Ended up at first economic research company where I really cut my teeth on sales. And then after that, pivoted into tech sales, which I did for about 10 years at a variety of different startups, mostly seed stage, Series A, early venture-backed startups. And, I like to say these were all at like the very small and scrappy cradle, stage where it's very easy to die. It's very easy to run out of money. And so when you're thinking about sales and outbound, it's imperative to do things on a budget, lean and mean, put up the logos, get the deals done, raise the next round to survive, right? And so that's a crucible that I think set me up really well to at a later point where I'm thinking, where do I want to go with my career? Well, it wasn't a crazy, huge leap to say, well, why don't we just apply a lot of these learnings, a lot of these skills to other businesses that are in a similar spot? Maybe it's a founder that's trying to grow and, step out of sales themselves, or maybe, they've got a small sales team, but it's still, early stage enough where every dollar counts. And they just don't have the ability to, throw money at the problem, hire 20 SDRs, fire 10 of them, and, it's fine. So that's been the background. Beanstalk grew organically out of meeting that need for other clients. Hey, I've done this sort of thing before. I get where you are, and let's do what we can to punch above your weight outbound wise before you can just hire your way out of the problem. And then Scaled Mail, which is our cold email inboxes as a service, really grew organically out of that, where we ran into some clients where they said, look, we want this as an in-house capability. No offense to you as an agency, but we want to control our destiny more. That infrastructure setup stuff is a pain. Can you guys handle that for us? And so that was kind of born out of some of the agency work that we did.
Yeah, it makes sense. And we know all about that infrastructure. It is a pain and time consuming.
It is.
How did your early experiences in sales and business development shape your philosophy on outbound strategy?
I mean, there's probably a ton of ways, and maybe I'm not always aware of all of them, but I definitely have my share of opinions about these things. If I think about some of my contrarian takes, there's some stuff that I think is true. For example, volume negating luck. I think Hormozy, gets a lot of credit for this quote, but I really believe it. My philosophy when I was in the sales seat, and it still is your goal output wise should be how much volume would I have to do if I absolutely suck at this? Not how much do I have to do if I'm okay or good at it. And lo and behold, if you do that much volume and you don't suck, then it tends to work out, whether you're hitting a quota or you're trying to meet a goal for the business. So That's a pretty baseline theory. I mean, but it really is true. And regardless of the channel, whether it's calls, whether it's emails, whether it's LinkedIn outbound, more equals better outcomes, right? And a lot of people get dejected and give up when they really just don't understand that all they really have to do is 10x what they're doing and they're going to start seeing results. They just
Totally.
vastly underestimate the amount of volume it takes to make an impact in this market. It's a noisy market. To stand out, whatever you think you need to do, X that number, and then that's probably more like where you have to be to actually start seeing stuff happen. I guess, on the flip side, contrarian take, I think that the whole predictable revenue, mechanized factory approach to sales teams is going to go away. I think it's already dying. But this whole oh, you've got SDRs over here. They only do the first step of the process. Then they hand it off to an AE who basically just closes business and waits to be fed. And then we've got, your customer success and they're going to renew the account. And you've got all of these different heads, all of these different responsibilities. And it worked for a while. But I actually think today, the incremental gains from that sort of strategy don't justify the cost associated with having basically 3 separate departments. I think you're going to end up seeing a return to full cycle sales in a big way, where you have salespeople that run the whole process, being supported maybe by a marketing department, obviously, but they own the relationship. They're not handing it off 3, 4 separate times, which, by the way, kills any sort of relationship that you've built if you've got to immediately hand it to somebody else and then they're starting from scratch. So I guess that's my countervailing opinion. I think you're going to see less salespeople that are higher compensated that do more in the future.
Makes sense. If you had to go back and give your younger self one piece of advice before starting Beanstalk, what would it be?
Wow. Probably do it sooner. Frankly, go out on your own sooner. I like to think of myself as a very risk-on person, but at the end of the day, I was basically in my early mid-30s before I really got serious about going out on my own. Now, I also think I would not have gotten as far as I have if I had not had the experience that I had working in corporate, working in startups, etc. But I do think that it is easy to overthink it a little bit and think, oh, I just need, that role, that title, that experience, etc. And the reality is that learning by doing is the most powerful way you learn anything. And so the sooner you get started, the sooner you end up where you want to be. And the longer you put it off, the worse the pill is going to be to swallow to start at zero. So I would have started sooner.
For sure. You may have already alluded to volume on this one, but we'll see. Many sales teams struggle to make cold outreach effective. What's the biggest misconception you see about cold email and cold calling?
Conversion rates across channels have dropped, right? Yeah, you've had the golden age of every category, right? The golden age of cold calling. Well, everybody had a phone on the desk paid for by their company and they were at work. So that was great, at that point in time. And then you had emails, right? Where I used to get 15, 18% reply rates on a mail merge when I first started in sales. Throw 100 leads in, you're going to get 15 replies, enough to keep you busy for the week, right? Those days are over. There's the Facebook ad, Google ads revolutions, right? Where those products came to market, people were absolutely getting crazy return on ad spend. And now that's normalized. So the lesson here is, unfortunately, as new categories or channels come online, there's always that arbitrage moment where you can really punch above your weight. But over time, that arbitrage gets competed away and these things get more expensive and less performant. And that's just what you're seeing on all of your traditional sales outbound channels. So email now, right? A good reply rate is 2 to 5%. That's good. Now, for a lot of people, they might say, how can you make that work? Well, you need the numbers to be big, right? It doesn't work if you're doing 50, 100, 200 emails. If you do 10,000 though, in a week or a month, then you start seeing enough come out the funnel that can make sense. And that's one example. But, if you compare the cost of a setup, for example, on cold email to be able to send at that volume, you compare it to ads, you could burn that on Meta in 3 days versus what your monthly cost would be to do that. So there's just a misconception about what level of investment, right? Some people think, oh, I shouldn't have to spend absolutely anything on this. And the answer is you probably have to spend more than you're thinking, but it's still less than your alternatives, right? Same thing with cold calls. You pull a list, you're getting an 8-10% connect rate at best, right? When maybe back in the day, you probably had, 3, 4 out of 10 pick up the phone. Now it's 8 out of 100. Now you need to be able to be efficient. Then you need more numbers, you need more data, you need more dialers, you need better dialers that don't waste time clicking, etc. But it's doable and it still works. So there's some more drag, there's some more expenses associated, your conversion rate's lower. So you need the top of the funnel to be a bigger number. So that's just true across any category you can name. But look, the alternatives are what they are, right? Direct mail, sure. Again, got to send more than you think. LinkedIn, well, you're capped on what you can send. So even if it is converting better, you can just only do so much before they get mad at you. So the alternatives are what they are, right? I mean, more volume and just maybe a more clear-eyed view of what a realistic conversion rate from your outbound activity can be.
Scaled mail focuses on cold email deliverability. What are the top 2 to 3 things sales teams must get right and actually land in the inbox?
Well, 2 to 3 things. All right, you're really keeping me down here. So you have 2 big pieces. You've got your infrastructure. So that means your inboxes, your domains, your sequencer software. And then you've got what's actually in the campaign. Who's it going to? What's it say? So we'll separate those 2. But on the infrastructure side, you used to be able to do, what I mentioned before, right? A mail merge. You send a couple hundred emails, you get a 15% reply rate. If it's 2 to 4%, you need the numbers to be way bigger. But there's a slight wrinkle here. Google and Microsoft do not like when you start sending 1,000 plus, 200 plus emails from any one inbox or any one domain even, especially if it's unusual activity. So we've run into a lot of situations where an enterprising SDR that wants to impress their boss gets a hold of a big list of 3,000 people and decides to load that all into a tool like a Sales Loft or an Outreach or something like that and tries to blast the whole list at once. Now, the problem is it's very elementary for Google and Microsoft to see an immediate spike in volume and just throttle that account. And there tend to be knock-on effects as well, where if this is a repeated pattern of what they view as spammy behavior, they're going to start hitting the deliverability of all inboxes on that domain. So, how does this actually manifest in real life? Usually people aren't keeping that close of an eye on the sales team or aren't aware of all these effects, but slowly they just you start hearing email doesn't work anymore, or, hey, our invoices went to spam when we were invoicing that client.
Mm-hmm.
This can kind of get worse over time and people don't really realize, but a lot of times what's actually happening is just you've gotten enough dings on that domain that they're starting to say, hey, don't bother sending this to the inbox. And it can have a real impact on the business. So what we advocate is what we call a lookalike domain approach. You buy a bunch of domains that look like your primary domain, but if they ever get spam flagged, it's not an issue. It's not an existential issue for the business. And so you'll redirect these to your main website. We don't want people to get lost. We're not trying to spoof anybody, right? It's pointing them to the right spot if they put it in the address bar. But for Google and Microsoft and the cops on the beat, we don't want them to necessarily see the true volume that's being sent. And so you're doing a little bit of volume on each of these domains, and in aggregate, you're sending the amount you need to get results in today's market. So that whole setup, and by the way, you need sequencers to also be able to coordinate all of these email inboxes and be able to send your message 1, message 2 campaign. And there's certain ones, Smart Lead, Instantly, Email Bison, Plus Vibe, that cater to this particular need. So
Sure.
there's a lot that goes into setting up those inboxes, those domains, to make sure that all positive signals are being sent to the inbox providers. So you have as good of a chance as you could possibly have to inbox. And that's the piece that Scaled Mail handles for you as a done for you service. And then the other piece is also just as important, right? That's the table stakes just to enter the game. Then you still have to do everything right to have this channel work. So on the list side, you've got to be really on it about pulling lists that are relevant for your offer. If you're just blasting people that are not relevant, you're going to have higher complaint rates, meaning the people that click this is spam. You're going to have low reply rates. You're going to have higher bounces. And all of that is feedback that goes back to those domains you're sending from. And eventually we'll start dinging them if the metrics are off. Your margin for error today compared to what it was 10 years ago is way less. Their tolerance for complaints, for example, is just much, much lower. Think 3 to 5 in 1,000 instead of 3 to 5 in 100. is kind of the new guidance, basically. So you really have to step lightly, tread lightly, horizontally scale so that any one domain isn't doing anything too crazy. And then you've got to send a relevant message to the relevant folks, because at the end of the day, the best feedback is your reply rate, right? When they see a human reply back, that indicates to the inbox providers, this is a high quality message. So
Got it.
that, I know that was a lot, but that's really the full landscape there.
Where do you think outbound still wins over inbound, especially in today's market?
When you're small and scrappy, because if you're a big entity, you can afford to throw cash at the problem effectively. These ad engines are incredible at this point, but they're competitive and they're priced up, and these auction systems extract every last dollar. So if you're big enough to be able to afford it, right, then you can target the right people with Meta, get a decent cost per click or a cost per engagement, push those down the funnel to a sales team, and they should be able to convert that at a rate that makes sense. But for a lot of these engines, they don't really get optimized until you're spending like 5-10 grand a month at minimum. There's some guys that say like, oh, they don't even really do well until you're spending like 50. Well, if that's not an option, then you still need to make money. So what are your options? Well, you could do cold calling, but you need a butt in the chair, training. Not every hire works out. It's a hard job to hear no all day. So that's got its own set of challenges, but that still works. You've got LinkedIn. Now, you can do LinkedIn messages by hand, slow, and they'll limit you to about 50 a day. You could try to do automation. Technically, they don't like it, but you can get away with, think 20-ish actions a day, connect request, message one, message two. But again, you're capped. Direct mail, you've got the physical postage costs, printing cost, but definitely an underutilized channel, in my opinion. You can do a lot of the techniques that people do with email on direct mail. And yeah, I don't know about you, but I basically get credit card offers and stuff I don't want. So it'd be nice to, even have somebody come after me that's not trying to give me a loan. Who knows? That's something I want to tap into more. And that really leaves cold email outbound, where you can, for think $1,000 to $1,500 a month, send at decent enough scale and get replies like day one after hitting launch on a campaign, assuming it's a good one. It's the fastest feedback loop that I know of. That's still the least expensive. Even though costs have been rising, it's still not commensurate with your other options, right? It's not as expensive as a butt in a chair, and it's a very fast feedback loop. You test messaging on cold email, it works. You can then port that into, with confidence, call scripts, ad campaigns, other channels, where now from a position of confidence, you can scale up.
For a company just starting to build an outbound engine, what's the first metric they should really obsess over?
If you're sending cold email, and I assume that's what we're talking about, there's really two metrics that you want to keep an eye on when you launch your first campaigns. The first would be your bounce rate. Your bounce rate should be just under 3-4%. Above 5% is a trouble indicator. It means that one of, if not more, of your domains are being blocked entirely or throttled, and you're going to want to go in, diagnose the issue, and maybe replace those domains or change the copy or do something, intervene. By the way, with Scaled Mail, we handle this as a white glove service. So we do proactive reporting, deliverability testing, and we can kind of let you know in advance, hey, this particular domain seems to be in trouble. Let's yank it out of campaigns. Let's get it replaced. That's piece one. Piece two is the reply rate. I know there's a bunch of marketers that swear by open rates and click tracking and all of this stuff. But when you're sending unsolicited emails, meaning they never opted in, right? This is not click here to subscribe to my newsletter or fill out a form on my site and I start getting ConvertKit emails or something like that. All that stuff, yes, tracking open rates can still make sense. They've opted in. They want to hear from you. Great. You put them in the nurture sequence. You nurture them until they unsubscribe or buy something. But when you're going direct, it's a very different ballgame. First of all of the pixels that people use to track opens, track clicks, they hurt your deliverability. That pixel is basically an image. And we tell people no multimedia, no links, no images, nothing in your cold emails, because you're sending from one domain to another domain. There's no really history of interaction. And so the ESPs, the email service providers, are going to be as cautious as possible in letting that email through to the inbox. And anything that could deliver a virus, right, or deliver some malware, which would be multimedia or attachments or links, is going to get way more scrutiny than just plain text, where you just can't do that stuff. We would advocate for plain text emails for cold email until they reply, and then you can kind of do whatever you want. But until they reply, you really have to be cautious. So yes, it's tempting to want to know what is the open rate, what's the click rate, but what you're also doing is hurting your overall metrics, which means less people see it. And there's a lot of false positives on these as well. There's a lot of machines that open your email and read it. Doesn't mean a human was reading it. You don't care if Apple read it. You only care if the recipient read it. So reply rate is the only thing you can really hang your hat on, because other than out of offices, it means a human looked at your email and replied, at least today. Now, maybe in a few years, that might not be true anymore, but for now, it's still true. Reply rate, think sub 1%. You want to investigate whether you have an infrastructure issue or a campaign issue. 1 to 2% room for improvement. Anything above 2% reply rate is pretty good. And then above 5%, load as many leads as you could possibly find into that campaign before it changes.
You've seen a lot of tools and strategies come and go. What's a sales tech trend you think is overhyped right now?
But there's a bunch. AI SDRs. It's not ready for prime time. I know everybody wants this to be a thing, but the problem is they're wooden and they sound like a robot. And at the end of the day, the main issue is that it is very easy to understand and find out that you are dealing with a robot. And unfortunately, people do not engage with robots the way they deal with humans. So I don't know about you, but if I call a phone tree and it says dial 1 for this, like, I know it's a robot, and the way I interact with that thing is usually something like, how the hell do I get to a human as fast as possible? And you've got to think that your recipients of any AI SDR outreach are feeling the same sort of thing. So it behooves you to really make sure that your outreach sounds as personalized and as human as possible, and any recipients, or any replies rather, get actioned by humans as quickly as possible. You want to use automation and AI at scale, but it's more to push a human into the loop as fast as possible, not to run the entire sales process or the whole sales development process. So that's one. I have another one too, which is the whole signals thing is just garbage. Like, all of this, we know exactly what people's search behavior is, and so you could pull a list of who's interested in this or that right now. To me, is a lot of smoke and mirrors. I don't think you can just pull a list of who's shopping for CRM right now and assume that that's actually going to work. And I've seen how these work. You've got like ad engines hooked up. So if Andrew goes to Salesforce.com, you're going to get thrown on a list that says you're interested in buying a CRM right now. But who's to say you're not doing competitive intelligence? Who's to say you're not looking at their pricing because you have a CRM and you're selling against them? Or you're looking at their integrations because you have Salesforce already and you're trying to, see what their API docs look like. There's so many different scenarios. What if you're in HR and you're just not even ever going to be the decision maker for this? So I think it's really just a lot of smoke and mirrors and a way to sell giant contracts to people. But I think, to be honest, there's no silver bullet. You've got to talk to a lot of people to find the 3 to 5% that are in market at any given time. There's no cheat code.
Love it. On the flip side, what's an underused sales technology or tactic that's working incredibly well for your clients?
And underutilized. Well, I'll have to think about this. Well, I'll tell you, I want to say cold calling, but it's really warm calling leads generated from other channels quickly. Speed to lead is still, I know everybody harps on it, like, oh, hey, in the first 15 minutes, first 30 minutes, if you hit them, your chance of getting a deal goes way up, but it's actually really true. We just did a test with a client internally where we had a dialer call on positive replies to an email campaign within 15 minutes. And we had a 75% booking rate on those replies versus like a 25% when it was within a day or so, calling or trying to do it via email solely. So just a massive difference. And that really backs up my supposition that really what you want to be doing if you're trying to stand up an outbound operation, let's assume you have some sales talent, even if it's the founder, it's build an outbound engine that can generate opportunities and interest at scale. But then it's all about routing that interest to a person as quickly as possible who can close the loop, book them in, and get them into your pipeline. So it's both AI and automation. Love it. Use it all the time. But there's still a role for people for the foreseeable future.
Do you see AI changing the game for outbound prospecting in the next 12 to 18 months?
I mean, going back to the AI SDR thing, having AI do the whole workflow to me does not make sense. What I do think you're seeing, or what is not overhyped in my opinion, is this rise of the go-to-market engineer, the person that understands APIs, understands tools like Clay, that can pull together campaigns, outing automation at scale, that can then feed a sales team, dialers, whatever that approach is, because that might only be 1, 2, maybe 3 people for, it could be for a company of 500 people. You don't need a ton of these folks, but they're really, really crucial to fill that knowledge gap. You can't just trust technology to do the entire workflow right now. You're going to see a lot of weird stuff going out the door, but the right human with these tools can punch above their weight class. And I think a go-to-market engineer that knows what they're doing today is worth their weight in gold. Every business needs to have that department or role figured out.
So obviously sales is a tough job. What's your best advice for staying motivated when the no's are?
Well, I mean, going back to my sales days, I have a few different answers. One is, hey, get up, walk around. Like, you get too many no's, like take a break for a second because you might be in a rut and try to come back to it with fresh eyes. I think call blocking is important. Like, you try to, chunk it out, 2 hours here, 2 hours there if you're a rep. But then take those breathers in between, do some admin work, right? Don't get distracted by it. When the next call block rolls around, don't keep doing the admin work, right? Dive back in. But I do think you got to kind of break it up. You can't be, nobody can dial 8 hours a day, hear no all day, and just like be okay, unless you're a psycho, right? Which maybe you are. I mean, that's great for you if you are. So I think that would be my advice there for hearing no all the time. I also think that you've got to be able to discern whether it's you. Is it your skills? Is it a legitimate objection, or is it the product basically? So I guess, is it a legitimate objection or not? There are some products and you could be as good as you want to be. It ain't happening. It's either the wrong person or there's no need. There's no pain. And nothing is tougher than rolling the boulder uphill. And I've been at those companies, and I think you do want to discern, is that what's going on right here? Or is this simply a volume or a skills issue? I'm just not talking to enough people, so I'm not letting myself get lucky, or I'm just not good enough. Billy over here is doing it. He's getting people interested, and I'm not. Use your head if you're a rep in the field and you're working at a company, right? If nobody can sell it, then that might be a problem. If somebody can sell it and it's just not you, then it's time to look inward and see if you need to scale up a little bit.
But what qualities do you look for when building a high-performance sales team?
I look for, this is really true for not just sales, but my entire team. I now just give this as a speech when we're hiring people, which is we really look for self-starters. Like, that is my number one criteria. And what I mean by that is, if someone comes in and waits to be assigned work, that's probably not going to work out, because we're going at 1,000,000 miles an hour and no one has time to babysit people. And I've just generally found that if I'm ever wondering if somebody's working, the answer is that they're not working, or they're not working hard enough. And the people that end up crushing it for us and advancing and making more money are always the people where I never have to wonder if they're working, because it's just so obvious that the question is answered. And so when somebody comes on, I basically give them that speech. If you ever make me wonder if you're working, it's probably not going to work out. So that would be the biggest thing. A self-starter to me looks around. You're a smart person. We didn't hire dumb people, hopefully. So we're looking for smart people that can look around, assess the situation, and know what the right next thing to do is. Now, obviously ask questions, obviously learn, but if you're just twiddling your thumbs and it's 2 p.m. on a workday, then that's a problem.
How do you personally balance being a founder, a sales leader, and a coach without burning out?
Well, I take lots of coffee breaks and I drink a lot of coffee. It's probably not the right answer, but that's my answer. I need a refill actually over here. I am kind of a workaholic, so I'm probably a really bad example for this. I definitely have had my whole career, I've had shiny object syndrome, which is both a strength and a weakness. I've always had my finger in a lot of pies, and I've always had a lot of spinning plates. It's probably held me back in some respects, but it also helps me deal with what you're talking about. Like burnout, I switch projects or I switch context for a bit and I work on something else. And then I come back to the thing that maybe was burning me out a little bit, right? If it's, I've been doing too many sales calls, then I try to, maybe dig into marketing a little bit and just work on something different. There's always a million things that need to be done, which is the nice part about a startup. So it's not like I'm avoiding. Usually it's just I'm just working on something else that's equally as important as the thing I was working on. And that context switching lets me kind of maybe get out of that burnout type headspace that, if I just kept slamming my head against the wall, I might be dealing with. So yeah, try to work on something else when that comes up. But yeah, my hobbies unfortunately are like way too work oriented. I actually need to start picking up some hobbies again. It's been a little bit of a concern for my wife. She's like, you need to get out of that office a little bit, like maybe play tennis again or something. So we'll see. I might start working on my golf game or something.
I hear you. What's one client success story that really sticks with you where the strategy completely turned their sales around?
Well, we've had a few clients that have come to us, and it's usually some version of like, we tried cold email, it doesn't work. And I always love dealing with these because it's almost always the same scenario. They They either have been sending from their primary account, in which case all of those issues we talked about earlier come into play. They're probably spam flagged. Nobody's seeing the messages. It's not that nobody wants their thing, just nobody saw it. And so we're able to quickly spin up new infrastructure, take these campaigns that used to work and breathe life back into them again. And that's something that we've done enough times that it always feels good, but it's fun to deal with that. The other scenario would be we tried cold email, it doesn't work, right? We've done the whole domains and inboxes thing. And these are a little bit thornier, but it's almost always either volume, like we discussed. We just X whatever they were doing and suddenly they start seeing things, or they've got a real product market fit issue. I mean, none of this stuff is a panacea. If you've got a business and you're selling something that nobody wants or not enough people want, there's no amount of outbound or inbound for that matter that's going to save you from that. There's always the picture of a business that hops around agency to agency when really they might just have to make some tweaks on how they're presenting themselves. And it can make a world of difference for their business. I'll give you an example that was positioning related. A client of ours works in the accounting software space and they're selling into CFOs. Now, if you go to market to CFOs and say, hey, I've got a new accounting software. Do you want to take a look at it? I mean, I imagine the crickets, right? You're not hearing anything back. And frankly, when they came to us and started working with us, they weren't hearing anything. They had a couple clients. Those clients are happy. We think we've got something, but they really didn't have a way to take that message, take it to market and see success. The first thing we really did was grill them on their onboarding call with us. And it was always give me examples of how people are actually using this thing. Like, I get that you can do a million things with this, but I can't go. It'd be like selling Salesforce and saying, look at all the things my Salesforce CRM can do. You talk about all of them. It's noise after a certain point. We hit on one scenario where they said, well, look, like if you're using Stripe and you're an e-commerce store and you're selling to consumer, you got high transaction volume. And there's this little, I don't remember exactly what it's called. Essentially, you come up with this scenario where if you're taking these e-com payments via Stripe for a high transaction volume business, you end up with a reconciliation nightmare at the end of the month. And these CFOs are basically, or controllers are taking, 10, 14 days to close the books on the previous month. Our tool with AI enables that to be more like 2 to 3 days. And our team was immediately like, okay, that's the angle. Because we can go and scrape websites for, are they running Stripe as a checkout? And then instead of just saying, hey, I've got an accounting software, do you have 15 minutes? Our campaign became, hey, saw you're using Stripe. Have you run into this issue with reconciliation at the end of the month? And then, hey, if we could make that 10 to 14 day period, if we could shrink that to 2 days, is that worth a chat? And that campaign ripped for them, still it rips for them. And we've now tried to come up with other scenarios that are similar, but that we didn't change their whole product, but it was all about their messaging and their positioning and making it unique, actually speaking to a pain point. Nobody, maybe somebody in general doesn't love their accounting software, but that's not pain. A pain's got to be specific. It's got to be, hey, I run into this very specific issue, right? My cold emails aren't getting delivered. Okay, that's specific, right? It's not, I want more sales. What does that mean? Okay, sure. I want an ice cream cone. But you get specific and you turn that into a campaign where you can take unique elements, craft it together, and that doesn't sound like everything else that's hitting their inbox.
Love it. If you had to make a bold prediction about the future of B2B sales over the next 5 years, what would it be?
My bold prediction is this go-to-market engineer thing is not a flash in the pan. I think there's going to be more and more companies that either have this as a department or have an agency like ours fulfilling this function. I think my full cycle sales role, I think full cycle sales is coming back. I think the artificial SDR, AE, CSM thing, I think it's a very expensive way to go about things. I think you're going to see leaner companies with fewer salespeople that make more money and do more and have more responsibility instead of we're going to have an army that we throw at this problem. I think those days are done. And I think AI enabling these people, not replacing them, is going to be really the theme in practice.
Makes sense to me. All right, Dean, that's a wrap, brother. Thanks for being here.
All right. Well, hey, Andrew, anytime. Really enjoyed it. And if you want to come check us out, beanstalkconsulting.co or scaledmail.com if you're just looking for some email infrastructure to power your campaigns.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
All right, that's a wrap on today's episode with Dean Fiacco. Proof that with the right strategy, the right systems, and a little bit of grit, you can turn cold outreach into a revenue machine. Huge thanks to Dean for sharing his wisdom and to all of you tuning in. Keep chasing your targets, keep leveling up, and as always, let's go hit those goals.
This episode is brought to you by Goals.com, the sales performance platform built to help teams stay focused, motivated, and on track. While most CRMs just track data, Goals.com drives real results. It's simple, affordable, and designed to help your sales team hit targets faster, without the headache of complex setup or costly consultants. Whether you're using a CRM or not, Goals.com works seamlessly to elevate your performance. Book a fun, fast demo today at Goals.com.